This morning I was explaining some points in relation to developing the right view, for which one has to go through the process of developing these three types of wisdom. The importance of that and what type of wisdom they are and what is the importance of them and so on. One develops the wisdom through learning, hearing, wisdom through analyzing or through deep contemplation, and then one should develop on top of it also the wisdom through meditation. In order really to generate a meditative wisdom is that wisdom which enables us actually to realize all the profound meanings, directly experiencing them. However, at the moment, we are lacking such a base in our mind. We are lacking altogether the meditative state of mind. Our present state of mind is kind of non-meditative state of mind, and so meditative state of mind is not yet existing anywhere in our mind. Our mind at present is a very nervous kind of mind, a mind which is very not calm and still, instead very excited and very agitated and very nervous mind. So therefore, that through the right methods, first of all, that kind of calmness, that stillness, more disciplined mind has to be produced. It is emphasized by the enlightened one. One has to develop in one's own mind those qualities which are lacking. That is the quality of the shamatha and vipassana. A union of shamatha and vipassana is absolutely necessary in order to gain the higher realizations. In general, our mind actually, in its ordinary state, it has these two kind of functions. One function is that it stays, and one function is that it moves. Just like our body also, either it stays or it moves. Like that, our mind also stays or moves. So that is the natural function of our mind. It is there. However, at the moment we have no control over the movement and for the staying and moving of our mind. All that movement as well as the stillness, whatever, of our mind at the moment is completely out of our control. It is all controlled by delusions in our mind. Sometimes our mind is so occupied or completely focused upon certain objects that it thinks about it. It stays on that object for hours and hours, or even days and days. In this case, that our mind is somewhat sticking there because of attachment, because of attraction, because of attachment, or because of desire and things like that. Then our mind is always so staying around or even totally fixed upon particular object, or object of our desire, object of our attachment, etc. Under the influence of such delusions like desire, it is possible for our mind to stay around an object for very, very long time. It does not mean that now we have gained perfect concentration or anything like that. Simply we are stuck with this object with the glue of attachment. And of course, the longer it stays stuck like that with such object, instead of producing any real benefit and any real peace and happiness within the mind, it only causes more and more sufferings in one's mind. So sometimes our mind is totally agitated, completely agitated or disturbed or completely agitated due to anger, due to such kind of jealousy or whatsoever, cannot be still at all, and or because of our certain worries or such kind of things, or fear or this and that, so many other types of delusions which keeps our mind very nervous, not at all in peace, not at all concentrated, but very much moving here and there. This is also very much the state of our mind. And also sometimes because of excitement, certain excitement or whatever that oneself feels due to gaining something or hope to gain something or whatever, where with this kind of hopes and with this kind of fascinations and so on, then one is, again, one's mind is totally excited. And then of course, in such situation, there is nothing calm and peaceful. These are most of the time our state of the mind. And then of course there is always permanent obscurity in the mind as well. There is a quite permanent and deep state of ignorance. Our mind fundamentally is always in a state of ignorance, not in a state of clarity, not in a state of wisdom, but in a state of ignorance. Because fundamentally we don't know anything. We are born not knowing anything. And then through the course of our life we learn some things, and then we learn something, but what we have learned is very few. Actually, even if somebody studied law many years in their studies, then they learn something, but it's still very few. But generally speaking, the general climate of our mind is ignorance and the deep obscurity, not knowing, even, of course it's very clear, not knowing even what will happen to ourselves this evening. So anything about every situation, our situation of our past, present and future, we are fundamentally ignorant. For an Arya being, like for somebody who has already attained the wisdom, that way has already attained Arya state. And then of course an Arya being, if one is born as an Arya being, or live as an Arya being, or die as an Arya being, that's a different situation. Then one doesn't have that same permanent, the obscurity in the mind. Instead there is great clarity. But otherwise, beings like ourselves, who are ordinary beings, so-called prathajans, these ordinary beings like ourselves, that is the general situation of climate, is the ignorance. We are born ignorant, and unless one brings about some big change within the life, then it stays always permanently in an ignorant state, and we also die in ignorance. So all these temporary knowledges and so on that we have developed, acquired during our life, and that way we have become somewhat intelligent and so on. But sooner or later all these, what we have gained, all this temporary knowledge and whatever, is completely subject to lose. Sooner or later, when we go through the process of dissolution of our mind, all the knowledge, whatever we have acquired, will all dissolve again into a deep state of ignorance, and nothing will be left, and let alone everything else. Even one will at some point not even remember one's own name or the name of the most beloved ones. That way, if somebody dies in a natural process, that is what is going to happen with all of us. So therefore these knowledges and intelligences, whatever we acquire during the life, also does not last very long. So very often we forget them, one after another. At some point everything dissolved into zero. So we will again reach to the zero. We start with zero and we end up with the zero, and in zero we move further. In an unfortunate situation, then there's no question. But in a fortunate situation also, even if one is again reborn as a really fortunate human being, as it happened with ourselves in this life, one has to learn everything again, and start with zero, knowing nothing, and one has to learn with all that difficulty for oneself, for the teacher, for everybody involved, from A, B, etc., or Tibetans, Ka. That's such a tiring process. But there's no other way. There's no other way to proceed. That is our natural situation, our mind. So therefore, whatever one has, surely we have learned in the past also, from the situation, the very favorable situation what we had now, we can infer. We also had some very fortunate situation in the past, in which also one has learned many important things. But however, those knowledge has not so reached to a deep level or deeply imprinted. They have not become a really integral part of one's mind, like the delusions, for example. So therefore, those knowledge, those understanding, and whatever other qualities that we had temporarily, and at some point they all have again disappeared. Then in this life we have to start again all over right from the beginning. So this kind of effortsome, even though it's a very fortunate situation, but still at the same time is very effortsome, because one has to learn everything all over again. And if we are lucky enough, then we will be in a situation with all the favorable conditions around ourselves, and then we also gain some wisdoms. However, the process is like that. It's not such as so reliable and so permanent. Now, it does not mean, of course, that we have not any connection, whatever we have done in the past. There's no trace left at all in this life. That's not what I mean. What I'm explaining is the kind of knowledge that we gain in our life. Lots of knowledge that we gain in our life with our efforts. But these knowledges, unless they become really so deep and become really a part of our mind, then they are subject to perish. That is what I'm saying. But actually, even anything, whatever we have done in the past, positive, negative, all those things, even though that thing itself is gone, it has perished, but each time they leave also their subtle imprints in our continuous stream of consciousness. So therefore, that always also brings its effect also in the future existence. Thanks to such imprints that we actually have reached ourselves in such a favorable condition. All these are things that we have acquired in this very life with regards to our life, with regards to our human life, with regards to our dharma life, whatever we have acquired, that all is linked with the very special cause that we have brought together in the past existence. So without that, such opportunity does not just happen to us just like that. So that is without any question. However, what I now try to explain is the quality of our mind in its ordinary level is not yet in such a situation with already a great clarity in the mind or great knowledge in our mind. Instead, generally speaking, in its fundamental state is in a state of ignorance, not knowing everything, and have to learn everything. Even when we first came, we not knowing who oneself is also. And then slowly one learns. First one learns to make lots of noise, make the life of parents particularly difficult, and completely rob them out from their sleep and so on. So that, and then slowly we learn to do still more and more useful things, hopefully useful things. The main problem in such a situation is our forgetfulness. Our forgetfulness is so overwhelmingly powerful. So that, by the force of that forgetfulness, all the trace of maybe the negative traces anyway doesn't matter. If they are forgotten is better. But even all those precious and positive good traces which is brought about with a lot of efforts are also totally wiped out. So nothing is left in our mind which can still remember those. And in particular, the most important thing which is so pitiful to have lost is the remembrance of the kindness of other sentient beings. That we have experienced immeasurably kindnesses from all sentient beings is not only in this life but also in our previous existences, so many times. And at the end of the day, then not any a little memory of that is left in our mind. So therefore, we have totally forgotten that close and positive link or relationship that we have had with every sentient being, for which Buddha very clearly had pointed out that all sentient beings are our mother, all sentient beings are our brother, all sentient beings are our closest friend, etc. Which is true. And that's what we all have lived, experienced, but now nothing is left there. All that trace is completely wiped out by our ignorance and forgetfulness. So therefore we even have difficulty to accept such kind of reality, such kind of fact, that we have actually not only in this life, but we have had so very close and positive relationship with so many other sentient beings, during which we have experienced immeasurable kindness, but nothing. Now only through the teaching of Dharma, then little by little, through a lot of effort of thinking in such direction, then slowly one generates such kind of conviction into such kind of things, which is also not so happens by itself. It requires lots of familiarization in our mind, because we have totally forgotten. So therefore, those are the great problems of our mind. Even though we are in human rebirth, and which is very conducive and so very favorable for spiritual development, and but even then we still have difficulty to train our mind. One of the main reasons why such a human existence particularly conducive for spiritual development is because actually every sentient beings, all sentient beings, we all have mind. Every sentient, up to a smallest insect, who we are completely equal in the sense that we are all carrier of a stream of consciousness. We are all sentient beings. We all have our mind. So because of possessing that particular faculty, which is called the consciousness, we are able to think, we are able to feel, we are able to have intentions to do this and that, we are able to feel sufferings, happiness, we are able to create positive and negative actions, karmas. Because of that stream of consciousness or the mind that we possess, all sentient beings in this sense are equal, and all sentient beings are potentially, fundamentally same. However, beings like ourselves, in this particular body and mind, are the complex what we possess now, that has some extraordinary potentialities. Because of that, there is nothing more suitable, more favorable base of existence for our spiritual development like this precious human existence. Because in that state of a human existence, there are a lot of extraordinary qualities, also on the physical level. But most important quality is shown on the basis of our mind. Our mind is in a state which is manifesting a kind of state as a result of, as a karmic result, as a result of a very wholesome karma, that our mind is also in a very, with great power. It's not a weak mind, it's a powerful mind, which has in its complexity very many, very special and valuable faculties, valuable factors within our mind, which are very important, which are not at all in the same state, not at all in such a manifest and in an active state in other forms of life, which has become so active, so functionable, and also in a very powerful way functioning and manifesting in our human base, human distance, and that is a very important reality. Those who have already studied about the mind and mental factors then know it quite well that our mind consists of many mental factors, so-called. Each has its mental activities to fulfill. So like this, there are a whole lot of mental factors. Some are positive, some are negative, some are neutral, etc. As it says in the Abhidharma, 51 mental factors and so on. These are very important. If you are interested, you can read them also in the Precious Masters, in a book, The Mind and Its Functions. There all these things are very clearly explained. In these, then one will understand there are special faculties or special factors in the mind. There are some which are shared equally with all sentient beings, but there are some which are particularly active in our human mind, like 5 ascertaining factors. And these are very important. These are the things that is needed in our learning, in our contemplation, in our meditation. Everywhere these are needed. And at the moment they are underdeveloped. They are there, but they are underdeveloped. So therefore we have all those problems. So these 5 factors, 5 ascertaining factors, such as aspiration, such as remembrance, concentration and intelligence, these are all factors of our mind, which is potentially present in our mind. Not only that, we are also using them very often for various purposes. So these are not only for the practice of dharma, but it's something that we use all the time. We need also for all activities, positive, negative, neutral activities. However, to use them in the positive activity for the practice of dharma, then that is very much lacking because we have never done it. So we are completely unfamiliar with it. In that sense, they are very weak and underdeveloped. Because they are weak, their capacity is very weak, therefore it's very limited. We are able to concentrate, because if there is this concentration not at all existing in our mind, if we are lacking this particular factor, then we can't, even for very short time, we cannot concentrate or think of any object. Is not possible. However, this is not the case. In our human mind, everybody is able to direct one's mind upon some object, upon one object. And also we are able to remember something of the past, something of the present, or what to do in the future. So we are able to, we have this kind of remembrance also. So those, we have this capacity, but in their ordinary state, they are very underdeveloped, so therefore they are very weak. They are very weak, very limited. So therefore we have the capacity to remember something. But of course, even that also is not very obvious. Things which are subtle and so on, immediately we forget it. Even something which is quite obvious, something which is so gross, that unforgetful, if it's something like that, then we are able to remember it longer. But that also is not something so unlimited or something. It's still something which sooner or later we forget. And then of course, because the remembrance is so underdeveloped, so weak, that is the main problem. Everybody complains about lack of memory, lack of remembrance. This is one of the big problems. And likewise concentration. To concentration means direct one's mind upon one object and then remaining mind fixed on that object for a certain duration of time. That is fundamentally something which we are capable of doing, but still that's also very underdeveloped, it's very limited, and generally it does not stay like for a long time upon one object at all. One always has to move from one object to another. If there is, as I said before, if there is some help of some glues, like attachment or something like that, maybe it stays sticking on a particular object. never forgetting it. But that is not by the power of the remembrance itself. It has by the power of its own, the power of the remembrance, but it's the power of the delusion. The glue is very strong. It's a very good quality glue. So therefore it stays for a long time sticking on that. Not because our memory has suddenly become so powerful. Unless there is such kind of help, our memory in itself is very, very weak, is very shallow, is very temporary. So all these fundamental activities of our mind, our human mind, though it is there potentially and we are using them, but it's all very poor quality, very underdeveloped. So that is the problem. Therefore, all these important works of learning, contemplation, and especially meditation all becomes for us hard work. If one really seriously doing these things, real meditation and so on, then it's not easy work. It is hard work because of the shortage of the weakness that we have of our mind. But actually our mind is, this great complexity is there. So as I mentioned before, not only our mind also, not only it consists of many factors, even negative factors also, destructive factors who are regarded as delusions, like 6 root delusions and 20 secondary delusions, which are also factors of our mind, which are also within our mind, not only just there, but they are very active and very, every now and then they are manifesting and influencing our mind, and that way disturbing everything. But it's not only, fortunately, our mind does not only consist of such kind of negative factors, but also it has equally, equal number of positive, very helpful, very constructive, very positive factors as well, supporting factors as well, which are now kind of forgotten, ignored, or neglected. And that is the big mistake that we always do. Otherwise we have these negative factors also, these positive ones also in our mind, like faith and compassion and loving kindness and patience and so on. Still many others, diligence and many things like that. There are a whole lot of very constructive, very positive factors as well. If we again take the support from these positive side, that also has same effect as the delusions have to increase our concentration, increase our remembrance. Just as out of attachment, because of attachment we can concentrate on one certain object, we can remember a certain object better. Even much more than that, if one develop the wholesome factors such as loving kindness or towards sentient beings, such as real faith towards the 3 jewels, for example. So when these positive factors in the mind they take the upper hand, they become strong, that also has the same effect. Out of that one can concentrate. Also maybe initially is not as strong as in the case of delusions, because delusions we are very familiar with and these things are not so familiar. But through developing the familiarity, when these things become really strong, our faith, pure faith becomes strong, our patience becomes strong, our compassion, loving kindness, etc. becomes strong, then also to concentrate, to remember, and all these things will also increase, which is the best way to do it. So all these possibilities are there, naturally present within our mind. When in the fully enlightened Buddha, when out of his great compassion and wisdom has shown us the methods for developing our mind, through showing all many different methods of meditation and everything. Actually, what Buddha has shown to us is nothing new, that is not kind of asking us to do something new or to get some new object from somewhere to make progress. Instead, what Buddha has taught is introducing ourselves to these potentialities that we have already in ourselves, that we are born with. It is already, we are born with all these potentialities. We are also, just as we are born with all these negative potentialities, we are also born with positive potentialities, whole lot of positive potentialities. The potential is there. So only Buddha or his omniscient wisdom has seen those exactly, the nature and the functions of all those things. Therefore has introduced us. And these and that, what is in our mind are really something which is beneficial, very useful. And there is not only they are there, but there is a way also to increase them, to increase their power, to perfect them.